ladies. I'm Thais Lopez-Vogel. I'm the founder of Volo Foundation. As many of you know, Volo is a data-driven organization, and what we want to do the most is interpret this scientific data and give it in a digestive way to the everyday people, and especially on climate and what's going on with the climate crisis. I'm a mother of 6. And we have had many mothers reaching out to us because they want to be part of the solution, and they also want to know how to get involved with the climate movement. So this is the reason why my team and I decided to create Moms versus Climate Change. Today, we have 6 amazing women, mothers, and all of us are involved in the climate change movement. And I want us to talk about our experiences as professionals, as warriors and heroes in this space. But especially, I want you to tell everybody out there how they can get involved. And I'm gonna introduce the mothers for a second. We have Vanessa Huck, an Emmy Award-winning journalist and a senior correspondent for Noticias Telemundo. Hola, Vanessa. Un placer. She's also a friend of mine. So, Hazel Chandler, she is an Arizona field coordinator for Moms Clean Air Force. And she's a mom, a grandmother, and recently a great-grandmother. She's been in this space for a lot longer than the other ones. So she is our specialist here. Dawn Sheriff. Hello, Dawn, another good friend of mine and Florida director of our partner program, Environmental Defense Funds. We have Dr. Claudia Benitez Nelson. Un placer. She's a science mom and climate scientist at the University of South Carolina, way out there. And another science mom is Dr. Tracy Holloway. She is a mom and a professor of energy analysis and policy at the University of Wisconsin. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here. It's an honor and a pleasure for Volo Foundation to have you all today. And I'm going to start with a little bit of science, since we're data-driven and we like to talk about the science. How can we bring scientific knowledge to the mothers? How can we tie the scientific issues and the facts to explain to the mothers what's going on and why we should care about this? I'm going to start with you, Tracy.
Well, thank you so much, Thais. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you. And when I think about, the challenge of bringing science to mothers and others in the general public, I think one of the things is to empower people to feel like, you don't have to be an expert at chemistry or have some advanced degree to understand that, humans are burning and fuels. We're powering our energy system, and in many ways we have a great system, but we can make it cleaner and we can make it better, and that is helping our kids, because recognizing that there is a problem is the first step to solving the problem. And one of the reasons I'm part of the Science Moms program is because they have developed a lot of resources to make it easier for moms to learn about the science of climate. They have Instagram posts, they have recommended books, they have books you can read for your kids. I think one of the things is to feel like, the goal is to find information that is where you're at and fun and interesting and useful. And whether that's YouTube videos or TikTok, or just reading your kids an introductory book about climate science, I think there's a lot of ways for moms to get up to speed on climate, and they should feel like they can do it. They do so much else. There's no question that they can understand the climate science if they want to.
I love that. We can do so much at the same time. My daughter always tells me, my brother cannot do that. It's just us. How about you, Claudia? What do you think about the science and climate and bring it to mothers?
Well, I think a lot of times, you're scared if you don't know something, you're not an expert in it. And the one thing that I always like to tell all my friends, et cetera, is that you're a mom, you're already a scientist. If you're cooking, if you're doing all the things that you're doing, if you're planning out your day for your kids and all the, you're already doing half the job, 3/4 of the job of what scientists do. And so, for me, again, I'll echo Tracy. It's about making everyone comfortable with the information and bringing it to where you're at. I mean, yeah, I can run rampant about some weird oddities about climate science. And they're like, oh, that's nice, Claudia. But when we can talk about, here's where we are, here are the things that are happening day to day. And again, having those resources that are really quickly available, because there's so many, it can be overwhelming. So being able to say, hey, go to Science Moms, check out the YouTube video, check out, the 5 basic underlying things about, we're putting fossil fuels in the atmosphere, that's warming our climate. I mean, that's, just really breaking it down, and I think in a way that is accessible, and particularly from, being in the South where it's really hot. It's humid. I mean, we have some very easy connections to talk about with moms when, they're like, oh, my kid can't go out on the playground today because it's so hot again. You're like, yes, and so those are natural connections that I think we can make all the time.
I love it. Vanessa is a journalist, so you have the camera in front of you. She's also a new mom. I mean, she's an old mom because she has an older kid, that's her son, but now a little one. Tell us, how do you do it in front of the cameras? How do you try to make it easier for all the people or the audience that you have to connect the dots and to think about climate and how can they be part of it?
Well, first of all, I love to be here with all of you moms, and a big hug and kiss for all the moms that are listening to us. I think for me as a journalist, one of my main goals is really to make this story, to tell the story of the climate crisis in a way that it resonates with people. That they really understand why this is impacting them, why this is important for them, why it's important that they get involved. So what I do when I tell any of my stories in Planeta Tierra here is really think about those elements and those stories and those voices that can really be able to tell the story. So we try to focus on solutions because I think is sometimes this information is so overwhelming, is so difficult to digest, as you mentioned, that I try to really bring it in a way that people first understand it, and second, that they feel hopeful that they can be part of the solution. There are so many things happening. I mean, I know that the problem is really big, but the solutions are on the way. I mean, we have the technology, we have the resources, we have so many groups that are doing so much. And I think that is the message that we want to send when we tell this story. This is happening. We are going through this transformation, and we want to include everybody. So I make a point to really include my audience and let them know that they can be part of the solution, that this is a process that we're going through as humanity, and that we just need to really jump in this wagon and all together transform the way that we're living and create a better future for all.
I hear you, Vanessa. I always say we Avolo focus on solutions. Stop the dreading and negative speech, and it's all about we have the solutions and we just need to implement it. Hazel, I want to go with you, and you have been doing this since your son was a baby, and like I mentioned before, you're already a grandmother and a newly great-grandmother. Tell us what has changed. How have you communicated your story in all these years, what you have seen that has changed?
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here representing Moms Clean Air Force and our 1.5 million moms nationwide. I got interested in global warming when I was nursing my son, who is now a grandfather over 50 years ago, I picked up an article from a fossil fuel company that was saying that there was going to be something like global warming, and by 2050, 2100, we would have some severe consequences for our livability of our planet. Unfortunately, what they were predicting then for 2050, 2100 is happening right now. And I saw a lot of progress in the 70s. We had the Clean Air Act, Clean Water, a bunch of things happened. Then we went through a lot of periods where climate change began to get politicized, and we didn't make much progress. But I've seen something happen in the last few years, and that's moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and interested people and scientists and health professionals and you name it have come together and have formed a collaboration that has allowed progress that I mean, it was in my dreams, I would really only dream about some of the things that have happened in the last 2 or 3 years. It gives me tremendous hope that our kids are going to have this great future. But we've got to keep going, and we have to keep joining together and joining our voices together. And there's nothing more important than moms, because we are the mama bears. We protect our children. And, you know, for me, I want to make sure that every single child has a livable future.
I hear you. I see and I can imagine. I mean, you've lived longer in this space, but I know we have some big wins like in the 70s and the Clean Air Act, and then big going backwards like the old administration. And then we have an amazing win with the IRA and the Inflation Reduction Act, something that we never saw happening in the United States. So impactful. Dawn knows, Dawn is not only a mother, and she fosters kids, which I think that is an amazing job too, but she is into the policy and into the what should we do? How do you see the intersectionality of climate change and social justice issues, and what steps can we take to ensure more equitable and sustainable future for all when it comes to policy? How do we get our elected officials to hear us?
Yeah, I think Hazel really, named it, right? The solutions for climate change have become so politicized and polarized, but really we're just talking about solutions that improve our air quality, improve our economy, save money, protect our kids. So we need to connect with lawmakers based on those shared values and build real relationships. So yes, of course, that means voting, but it also means having an ongoing conversation with your lawmakers, even when they do something that you don't love. Educate them, build trust. And when they do the right thing, you really need to show up and thank them privately and publicly. I think, when we look at how climate change impacts different people differently, we know that low-income students and communities of color are much more likely to be exposed to things like school bus diesel exhaust and air pollution. So we have to find the solutions that make sense for those communities. They're also most likely to have some of the oldest buses. The good news is, by showing up and advocating at your local board, you can actually help them convert their fleets to electric, which will save up to 30% per bus. Incredible. I mean, just for example, if you converted every school bus in the state of Florida to electric, taxpayers would save $100 million annually. That makes sense to everybody, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. You save money and kids are breathing clean air. And it really does show up most in our most disadvantaged communities.
And that's what we want to hear. We want to hear numbers, simple math that makes sense. That's what Tracy, how do you balance the responsibilities of a parent in your activism and your advocacy, and how do you translate that science? Tell us something that you usually tell the mothers, or in a scientific, easy way to understand what's going on and how we can help.
Yeah, I think one thing I've heard in the conversation so far is how we need to focus on solutions and how we need to give people hope and a positive message. And a lot of my work actually deals with chemicals in the air that make people sick that in the United States have been regulated since 1970. And a lot of people don't know this, but when it comes to the chemicals we're breathing, actually our air is getting cleaner. Climate is still a huge challenge, but we have tackled environmental challenges before. And when we look back at 1970, the air was getting dirtier and dirtier until we passed the Clean Air Act. And then we turned a corner and the air got cleaner. A lot of people don't know that that's in many ways a success story. And so when I think about what I want my kids to look back on my work, I'd like them to look back on the 2020s and say, that's when they turned the corner. That's when we started seeing solutions to climate change. We're not going to solve it overnight, but I think that if we look to the success stories that we've had before, we see that we need to start somewhere and that we can turn the corner. That's really what, I'd like my kids to look back on and know that we, as the parents, we're doing all we can to solve this issue.
Yeah, that's very important. In that easy graph that you said in the 70s, it was going up. And then that's what we have to show more, those easy graphs, the numbers that don't just say how much tax and money we can save, how much the air is cleaner. Claudia, any other example that you can tell easily to mothers? How are we tackling in the scientific world, tackling climate change? How the solutions are you seeing every day?
I'm just going to say I see so many solutions every day. It really does give me hope. I'm with Tracy in that, gosh, as my kids are getting older, I don't want them looking at me and saying, so, Mom, what happened? Why didn't you do anything? And you going, no, I have been doing quite a bit, and here are the things that, our water is cleaner for the same reasons that Tracy has talked about. There used to be stories about setting rivers on fire because they were so dirty, right? I mean, and we don't have that anymore to the same extent. That doesn't mean that we can't get better. And as someone who teaches at a university, and I teach my undergraduates all the time, let me just tell you, they have so many wonderful ideas and thoughts and are in it to make a difference. And they're amazing. They're coming up with new ideas all the time, how to be way more efficient for solar power, how to be way more efficient in terms of how we not just build batteries, but recycle batteries. And so I guess for me, it's just a matter of taking advantage and taking action of all of the solutions that we have right now. It's that inertia, oh, that means I might have to change X or Y. But the idea being that if you just made a small, subtle change, if we just invested, exactly what Dom said, it will pay off in the end by huge margins. And so it's having that conversation and making it understood that yes, if we turn off our cars, if we think about moving to electric, if we think about investing in solar, the air will be cleaner, it'll be cheaper. Everyone gets behind this because who doesn't want cleaner air, cheaper, different types of jobs, opportunity for jobs? I mean, and the more we prepare and think about this now, the better we are to making those solutions. So yes, I mean, I think it's very optimistic. It's hard sometimes when you see it in the news and you hear about all the doom and gloom, but I really am excited about our future if we just move like now. We move now.
Vanessa, and I'm gonna take her words that she says that what you see in the news is gloom and doom. Why is it that, what do you think the news is always more towards the negative? And why don't the journalists or also the politicians, and that goes to Don after, why don't they see the responsibility that we as mothers see? Like, I heard all of you saying, I want my kids when they grow up to look me in the eye, and I'm gonna say, I did my 100%. I did everything I could for that. Why do you think, Vanessa, that journalists rather just see the story on the negative side and not convey how much is being done since the 70s, or how much the IRA, for example, is important, or how much progress we are making on this side?
Well, that's a tough question, Thais, but I mean, I think that when you work, I have been a journalist for 24 years, and when you are in a newsroom, it's not that you only choose the bad news. It's not that you do it on purpose. I guess what we do is we have we analyze all the news that come out, and really there are realities, and in many places things are not good, and I think they just stand up, and we have to report it, because that's the reality that is happening around us. But when we talk about the climate crisis, at least for me, and our focus with our environmental research unit has been that. I mean, we realize that, and there is scientific studies that show that when you actually give the news in that way, in a pessimistic way, our brain basically shuts down, because it's something too big and they cannot process it. And just as a survival mechanism, they just want to get away from those news. So it really doesn't make sense to give them the news that way. So I really make a point to focus on solutions, and to also give news in a way that I can include my audience, that they can see that they can be part of the solution. For example, if it's recycling, okay, you can do it this way, so they learn, and it's a didactic way to tell the stories, because that gives them hope. I mean, not only we're telling them this is happening, there is solutions, but you can be part of it. Of course, we have to tell them the reality. Okay, climate change is this is the case, and we need to move faster, because that is the truth, and we need to be very clear on the science. But at the same time, I think it's a very special balance that I try to walk when we do this news. I wish the news were better sometimes, because I have to do the news too.
And
So,
I honestly, I can attest, I mean, your program, the Planeta Tierra, is super light in that it very digestible and very, I mean, as much as you give the real news and you have to do it, it is in a light way. So we do feel hope, and we feel the good thing. I feel more like, it's so easy when our science moms here make it so not complicated to put 2 and 2 together. I don't understand why people don't understand how easy it is, and when people deny it. And those are things that journalists see every day. And Don, you also see our politicians, and when they're in Tallahassee, in our case in Florida, and they don't see it as clear. Why is that? The education hasn't gotten there, or why is the lack of information at our political level? What do you think that?
I think there's a few reasons, but the most potent one is they're not hearing directly from the members of their district, their community, that this is top priority, right? It's very much a triage situation. When you're a policymaker, your squeaky wheel gets the grease. And unless folks are really coming to them year round at the grocery store, in district meetings, at their kids' school play, talking to them about why these issues matter in their community, they're not going to sort of try to take it on, because they like to tackle problems that they know they can solve, right? They want to come home with a win. People that are really interested in public service want to deliver that, and they feel like they can't take on a global crisis, but that's actually not true. We're only going to accomplish these challenges by taking a lot of small incremental steps. And that's something that we can ask each of our, local, state, and federal officials to do.
I love that. Little steps will get us there. Everybody, every time is like, how are you going to solve the problem? I mean, one step at a time. And when they talk about electric vehicles, and someone was telling me the other day, oh, but the battery is also bad for the fossil fuel. I'm like, listen, don't let perfect ruin your good. It's not perfect. We never said it was perfect, but it's a lot better than the fossil fuel, and numbers, and our scientists can attest to that. So it's one step at a time. We're not gonna solve it one day from another one. Hazel, how can we mothers advocate more? How can we get to those politicians to hear what mothers, and not only the people in the district, to hear what is actually affecting us, and how can we attack this, since you've been in this for so long?
Well, it's human nature to fear change, to fear the unknown. And one of the things that Moms does really well, and I think it's a focus that we all need to have, is helping people understand what the future could be like with clean cars on the road, and with all of these new advancements that we have. 50 years ago, we didn't have the solutions. And so it made it really difficult to transition and keep our lifestyle. But now we've got those solutions, and it's just, we need to do that. And I think the more you can let people know what the world can look like after, when we implement clean energy and clean cars and clean trucks and school buses that you don't have to have an asthma inhaler in order to stand by or ride, we will start to move to the place where everybody gets excited about it. And our moms' voices cannot be more important. And we just have to be part of that and get together and talk about what that world will look like and the steps to get there.
I'm going to stay with you, but I want to ask this to all of you. What is the biggest challenge facing moms who are fighting climate change, and how can we overcome that?
I think you said you were going to stick with me.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking, and we have to instill in every single mom the urgency. And we have to make our voices of urgency prevalent with our elected officials and with the other policymakers. It's a tick, 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 and we're running against time. And I have every expectation that we will get there, but how much issues we have to go through, how much hardship we have to go through getting there is the question. Climate change is impacting us all right now, but how much worse is it going to get before our solutions click in is the question.
Tracy, what's our biggest challenge, and how can we overcome it?
Well, to me, one of the big challenges is that climate change has become so political. It's hard to talk about it without people fighting. And, I think that many of us just want to do what's best for our kids, do what's best for our families. And, it can be overwhelming to tackle these challenges when you're worried that it can lead to a dispute. And I guess the way that I try to overcome it is by finding those common ground, finding the common values. And, there's a lot of different ways that reasonable people can disagree on what to do about a problem. But if we don't even acknowledge that there is a problem, and if we also don't talk about these solutions, then it's hard to find that common ground. So I think also just talking about it in different contexts is a way to take the charge out of it, because if everybody views it as a hot button issue, then it will stay a hot button issue. But if we just say, you know, this is happening, there's lots of solutions, like, what do you think is the right path forward? I think that's the way to get it going in a non-confrontational way.
Yeah, I love that. Just talk about it like don't make it political, not politicize it. Dawn, what do you think is the biggest challenge and how can we overcome?
I mean, show me a mom who isn't really busy, right? We've got lots of demands on us. We're probably all, you know, doing the logistics for our own Mother's Day celebration this week, right? Like, we have a lot on our plates. But that doesn't mean we can't do it. We have to find a way to integrate it into the things that we're already doing. Every mom knows your superpower is when you behave the way you want your children to behave, right? Lead by example. So don't get a babysitter for your climate action, bring them along. Let them learn about air quality. Let them see you standing up for them and for what's good for the planet, and they're gonna follow along. It doesn't have to be hard. Plug into an organization like Moms Clean Air Force that can, you know, find those local opportunities so that it's something that you're doing with your kids, that is fun, that doesn't take you out of your family time, because that's so important.
It's amazing. I even driving to school, and in the car, I have our podcast, Climate Correction. And sometimes I ask questions because they're listening to the podcast. So I love what you said. Vanessa, tell us, especially you being a journalist, working 24 hours. We know you're busy. So how do you do it?
I don't know how to do it, but I guess is nature for us women, that we are just multitasking, doing 1,000 things for the people that we love. So I think that is the strength. But for me, really, I think there is two great challenges that we face. One is misinformation, because this is something that is not only affecting the climate conversation, but every conversation in our country. So I think it's very important for moms to really look at what is the source of the information that you're reading, like really go to organizations that are accredited or news organizations that are accredited in order to get their information. And the other thing that I think is challenging is the thought or the misconception that we are alone in this fight. And I think it's very important that we understand that we are not alone. I mean, that we are many of us from many different walks of life are doing this effort, and that we're going to make it. I mean, that we have that clear sense that we are going to make it, because there is no other way. I mean, we have just one planet, and we need to really make the changes necessary for our children and the next generations to live here. So yes, those are the two things that I'm fighting for.
Thank you. Claudia, I'm going to give you the same question, but then we're going to go the other way. And I see the other ways because I see them here. And I just want you to tell me your message. What would you like to send to other moms who may be hesitant or don't know what to do? And just give me whatever your thoughts on this, starting with Claudia, and then I go back.
Sure. Well, I guess what I'll just say is, you know, moms are overwhelmed. They have very little time. And so for me, it is just do what you can, you know, and I really want to be supportive of anyone who just does what you can. And even little things can really make an impact on your children. So going outside, exposing them to the environment. If you have plants at home, you know, or goldfish or a pet, you know, really talking about, you know, how important it is to make an environment in which, you know, those plants, animals, when you're outside can be successful. And I will own end your failure when you have a plant. I don't know how many of you kill your plants. I kill my plants. I'm really bad at it. You would be surprised. But I talk about it. I'm like, oh, I didn't keep my plant, you know, we overwatered it, or we didn't underwater, you know, and so that for me is an opportunity to talk about how important it is for the environment, how important it is for us to, you know, understand our environment and how tricky it is to make, you know, that environment be successful and grow. So I do think having those conversations with your kids, having conversations in general, and reaching out to individuals where they are about what they, you know, don't give up your whole life. I mean, but do what you can, right? You know, you can walk up the stairs occasionally if that's within your, you know, mobility. And think about how you then make a point to communicate those issues and be collective in that conversation. We all feel alone. Sometimes we feel really alone, right? On any given topic with being a mom, you're like, oh my God, is this just my kid? Is it just me? You know, and so having conversations again, and I agree, being collective, showing that there's really a lot of other moms out there who feel the same way, but maybe they're reticent, maybe they're, you know, they don't want to have that, you know, conversation because they're afraid. And so bringing it up, I bring it up all the time. So my concluding conversation is to have the conversation.
Your
Just have it.
superpower,
Your
your
superpower
superpower is to have the conversation. I
is to
love it.
have the conversation and to do it, and to do it from my space. And I, you know, when I say, oh gosh, it's really hot, or I don't want to have a conversation after a horrible event, a flooding, you know, a hurricane, a forest fire. By that point, it's a little too late. I want to have the conversation all the time, right? About, oh, isn't it beautiful? And, you know, oh, look at the trees. Oh, you know, oh, the allergy started early this year. What do you think? You know, I mean, that's the conversation. That's my superpower.
Great advice. Thank you for your superpower. Hazel, what's your superpower?
Well, I think a mom's superpower is to teach our children to love nature. You know, we wouldn't be in this mess if we hadn't disconnected from nature and our planet that gives us life. And every single mom needs to, you know, yes, we need to be active. We need to make our voices heard and all that. But we need to take time with our children to help them fall in love with our planet again. And it's so hard when you live in the city and there's not good places to connect with nature, but we need to make that intentional.
Thank you, Hazel. Tracy?
I would say my superpower is staying optimistic. It can really be overwhelming to deal with all of these different facets of the solutions and the problems and the day-to-day. How do I pack my kids' lunch today and plan for their future 30 years from now? But I think this idea that, you know, we've done it before, we do so much, and it doesn't, you know, the perfect doesn't need to be the enemy of the good. I think doing, you know, one thing and moving things just a little bit better is making the future better for my kids. And it's making me show my kids that I'm taking action. So I guess, you know, not holding myself to unrealistic standards and trying to always stay focused on the positive.
Thank you. Dawn?
You know, I think we do it a lot automatically as moms. We connect the dots. Why do you need to shut off the water? Why do I want you to shut off the lights, right? That's the same conversation we should be having when the electric bill comes in and it's really high, or, you know, there are things that are changing in our community. We need to be connecting the dots. We do it with our kids. We need to do it with our friends, our neighbors, our family, and certainly our elected officials. And that's really our superpower, is kind of taking the complicated and breaking it down into 100 little things that you can really focus on that makes climate change real to you and to your family. And that's going to motivate you to take the next big step.
Amazing. Vanessa?
Well, I think it's there is no greater love that from a mother to their children, and I think that is our superpower, because when we tap on that love and we realize that, I mean, there is nothing more important for us, mother, than the well-being of our children, and from that space we can all do something. I mean, regardless of where we are. I mean, if we are a journalist, or if you are working in the financial sector, or if you're working in an ONG, I mean, whatever you are doing, but when you tap into that sense of I can do something for the well-being of my children, for the future of my children, that is what we love the most, I think we're unstoppable.
Definitely. I'm gonna close with that. Do something. Just action is the word. We can sit there and blame the government or blame the journalists or blame the politicians. I mean, we have to do something, and we all have something, like you said. If you're a teacher, you have intellect, teach others, talk about it. If you have money, invest on an environmental project. If you have a platform, create a narrative with data around the climate change. But we all, exactly what you said, Vanessa, we all have something to give. It can be small, it can be big. Just give your 100%. And tomorrow you can look at your kids and say, I did my best for your future. I thank you all, amazing moms. We all have superpower. The biggest superpower is just to be a mom. and that is an honor for me to have you all here. Thank you for doing everything you're doing for the climate. And until next time.